Chapter 1: The Abduction. Ravan leads a surprise assault on a Malayaputra camp to capture Sita, the woman believed to be the next Vishnu. His forces overwhelm the defenders. Despite fierce resistance, Sita is subdued using a powerful toxin and taken aboard the Pushpak Viman. Ram and Lakshman are not found. As the Viman ascends into the stormy sky, Ravan finally lays eyes on Sita, unconscious but radiant. Her aura unsettles him. Though he masks it, he feels something deep and primal stir inside him. Chapter 2: The Goddess and the Boy. At age 4, young Ravan is dissecting a hair when he is interrupted by a visiting Kanyakumari, a prepubescent girl believed to host the spirit of the goddess. She frees the animal wordlessly. Her calm power shocks Ravan. Later, he cheats in a music competition by sabotaging a rival's instrument. He wins, but his father, Rishi Vishrava, shames him and calls him cursed. Only the Kanyakumari's earlier words echo in his mind, "You can be better." That moment becomes the foundation of Ravan's internal quest for worth. Chapter 3: Brother of Blood. Ravan's mother Kaikesi gives birth to a second son, Kumbhakarna, who is clearly a Naga. The midwife tries to kill the child but Ravan intervenes with a blade. They learn the horrifying truth: their father Vishrava ordered the child's death. Marich helps them flee the ashram. That night, in the jungle, Ravan holds his baby brother and swears to protect him from the world. This moment marks the birth of Ravan's fierce loyalty, and his hatred for those who judge Nagas. Chapter 4: A Heart Torn in Two. Ravan, now a teenager, returns to the Rudra temple in Vaidyanath. A new Kanyakumari has been chosen to serve as the living goddess, replacing the girl who once inspired him to be better. When the crowd reverently calls out Kanyakumari, Ravan refuses to look up. His heart breaks again. The girl who changed his life is gone, her name and whereabouts lost forever. He is left only with her memory and the echo of her words. Grief overwhelms him, and he leaves the ceremony abruptly, unable to stay where she once stood. Chapter 5: Eastward Ambition. After learning that Kumbhakarna's Naga condition has no cure, Ravan decides they must leave Vaidyanath. He refuses to stay in a place where they live off charity. Declaring himself the head of the family at just 9, he convinces his mother and uncle Marich to move east to seek trade and fortune. This decision marks the beginning of Ravan's journey toward power. Marich sees this as the turning point, where Ravan transforms from a precocious boy to a commanding leader. Chapter 6: The Pirate Ship Deal. In Chilika, Ravan, now 13, negotiates ruthlessly with a local trader, Akampana, for an abandoned ship. After witnessing the trader being berated by his wife, Ravan proposes a 90-10 profit split, 90 for himself. He even threatens to handle the man's wife if needed. Marich is shocked by his nephew's cold pragmatism. Yet, Akampana agrees. Ravan takes over the ship, refurbishes it, and begins his career as a smuggler. This moment cements his evolution from a sharp boy to a shrewd operator, unapologetically ruthless. Chapter 7: The Girl with the Knife. During a ship inspection, Ravan encounters a gang of pirates. After defeating them, he sees a girl among the captives, bloodied, calm, holding a knife. Instead of flinching, she kneels and offers the blade to Ravan. Impressed by her fearlessness, he accepts her into his service. The girl says her name is Samichi. From that moment on, she becomes one of Ravan's most loyal and dangerous followers. Chapter 8: The Ballad of Ambition. Ravan and Kumbhakarna sit in a grand private library, discussing their next move, robbing Prakachabahu's treasure. The scene is filled with banter and warmth, showing Ravan's rare soft side. Ravan reads aloud a poem he has written, The Ballad of the Sun and the Earth. It's beautiful but bleak, echoing his belief that love is transactional and painful. Kumbhakarna is moved but unsettled. Ravan is becoming both more brilliant and more broken. Chapter 9: Her on the Shore. During a heist on Nalban Island, Ravan glimpses a woman on a distant shoreline, her stance upright, regal, unafraid. It's her, the Kanyakumari. Years have passed, but he recognizes her instantly. Arrows rain down, and Ravan, wounded, tries to leap into the lake to reach her. Kumbhakarna restrains him, begging him not to get killed. Ravan, weeping, repeats just one phrase, "Let me go." The ship sails away, and with it, Ravan's last chance at peace. Chapter 10, The Forgotten Goddess. Ravan finally finds the Kanyakumari, now known as Vedavati, in a small village called Todi. She's pregnant, married, and does not recognize him. For Ravan, it's soul-crushing. He stands silently, listening to the voice that once haunted him with hope. He forces himself to smile, managing to speak only in a squeaky, awkward tone. Kumbhakarna sees his brother's heartbreak and understands it's worse than unrequited love. It's love not even known by the beloved. Ravan accepts her hospitality, but he is shattered. He knows now that she's truly lost to him. Chapter 11, Schemes and Shadows. In a quiet moment of reflection, Ravan teaches Kumbhakarna the cynical laws of power. He explains that everyone, men and women, can be used if one understands their wants, sex, status, or wealth. He describes Zabibi, a courtesan Kumbhakarna fell for, as someone who lies to others but not to herself. Ravan also reveals his next move, to attack Kubir's trading ships using disguised pirates. His plan is to weaken Kubir's wealth and force him to hand over the Lankan army. Ravan doesn't want just power, he wants institutional legitimacy. Chapter 12, The Return to Todi. To avoid suspicion from local authorities, Ravan and Kumbhakarna use aliases, Jay and Vijay, and rent a modest bungalow near Vaidyanath. They travel to Todi frequently under the pretense of studying check dam construction. They reconnect with Vedavati, who now leads local development efforts with unmatched respect and trust from villagers. Ravan, though wounded inside, puts on a mask of civility. Kumbhakarna worries that his brother is being pulled deeper into an emotional trap, one that could unmake him. Chapter 13, Masks and Memories. Ravan and Kumbhakarna dine with Vedavati and her companion Shochikesh in Todi. During the conversation, Shochikesh recounts a tragic incident, an innocent worker trampled during a raid at Chilika, 3 years earlier. Kumbhakarna freezes, remembering that raid, their raid. Ravan remains expressionless. Vedavati condemns the violence, unaware she's sitting across the very men responsible. Kumbhakarna realizes the irony, she mourns a crime committed by the man she trusts most in that moment. Chapter 14, Moonlit Melodies. Kumbhakarna urges Ravan to return to Lanka, but Ravan refuses. He sends their crew on a trade mission just to keep them occupied. That night, he gazes at the moon and plays a melancholic tune on his Ravanghita. The melody, once an instrument of grief, becomes one of joy under Ravan's hands. Inspired by Vedavati, Ravan shows that the pain of loss can birth beauty. Kumbhakarna watches, overwhelmed. His brother, shaped by sorrow, creates a moment of transcendent calm. Chapter 15, The Goodbye That Wasn't. Ravan visits Vedavati alone, begging her to come to Lanka. His voice breaks. He promises not to touch her, not to ask for anything, only to look at her, to know she's near. Vedavati calmly refuses. She tells Ravan he never needed her, only the idea of her to become better. His growth, his fire, it was always his. Her words are gentle, but final. Ravan's pleas fade into silence. It's the emotional severing of a bond that never truly was. Chapter 16, A Sign of Horror. Ravan discovers a forged receipt in the name of Sukarman, one of Vedavati's local acquaintances. Ravan and Kumbhakarna ambush Sukarman and 5 other men as they attempt to flee. During the interrogation, Ravan suspects something far worse than theft. As realization dawns, a terrible fear grips them. Kumbhakarna rallies their soldiers, and they charge toward Todi. Upon arrival, they find a chilling scene: silence, villagers gathered in shock, and death in the air. Chapter 17: Fire and Blood. The horror is revealed. Vedavati and her husband have been murdered. Sukarman and his gang had tried to rob her, and when she refused to hand over Ravan's symbolic hundi, they killed her. Ravan and Kumbhakarna unleash vengeance. The murderers are tortured and executed. Sukarman is kept alive to suffer longer. Ravan, covered in blood, breaks down outside Vedavati's home. His grief spills over into hatred. "I hate this cursed land," he whispers, not just in sorrow, but in declaration of war on the world that took her from him. Chapter 18: The Roar of the Goddess. 2 years after Vedavati's death, Ravan plays a powerful raga on his Ravanghita, Ragavashi Santapani, inspired by the warrior form of the goddess. Kumbhakarna praises it as the most intense music he has ever heard. Ravan shrugs off the compliment, still broken. But he has been busy. He now secretly controls both Lanka's pirate attacks and the security offered against them. His wealth and influence are growing fast, and soon he may be made commander of Lanka's official trading security force. The foundation of Ravan's formal power is now being laid. Chapter 19: The March to Karachapa. Emperor Dashrath leads the massive Sapt-Sindhu army to Karachapa, expecting an easy victory. Ravan, however, uses scorched earth tactics, destroying villages, poisoning wells, and cutting off supplies. His army waits inside the city, well-fed and ready. Outside, Dashrath's half-starved troops struggle. Ravan's cold strategy turns their size into a burden. When battle begins, it becomes a massacre. Ravan shows no mercy. Dashrath barely escapes. The price: a crushing treaty, humiliation, and broken morale across Aryavarta. Chapter 20: A Toast to Defeat. Months after the victory, Ravan and Kumbhakarna reflect over wine. Kumbhakarna wonders why they didn't kill Dasharath. Ravan explains that death would have made him a martyr, humiliation is a better weapon. They laugh at the irony that Dashrath's son, born the day of the defeat, is named Ram. Ravan mocks the symbolism. But Kumbhakarna reminds him, he must let go of his pain over Vedavati. Only then can her memory remain sacred. Chapter 21: The Perfect Villain. In Agastya Kootam, Vishwamitra and Arishtanemi discuss Ravan's growing power. The Malaya Putras see him as the perfect villain, feared across Aryavarta, yet brilliant and disciplined. Vishwamitra gloats that Ayodhya's pride is broken. He credits Ravan's ruthless tactics and the staged death of Meghdut for shifting the balance of power. Ravan, without knowing, has become a tool of destiny, paving the way for the next Vishnu's rise. Chapter 22: Fall of Kubir. 3 years after Karachapa, Ravan takes full control of Lanka. He manipulates Manthara to make Kubir believe he's under threat. In fear, Kubir abdicates, leaving with his wealth, wives, and even the Pushpak Viman, Ravan's future weapon of dominance. No blood is spilled. It's a political masterstroke. Ravan becomes the undisputed ruler of Lanka and begins reshaping it into a prosperous superpower. Chapter 23: The Golden Empire. Now 38, Ravan rules over a flourishing Lanka. It is called Golden Lanka: clean water, free healthcare, zero taxes. He is revered almost like a god. But the grandeur hides rot. He marries Mandodari only to insult Sapt-Sindhu, not for love. Only his son Indrajit brings him joy. Meanwhile, Kumbhakarna becomes restless, torn between loyalty to Ravan and his own dharma. He spends more time away, on missions and expeditions, seeking space from Ravan's shadow. Chapter 24: Ashes and Atonement. Kumbhakarna forces Ravan to honor a long-forgotten promise, build a charitable hospital in Vedavati's name. He demands Ravan stamp a hundi to authorize funding. Ravan, lost in decadence and addiction, is barely present. When a courtesan mocks Kumbhakarna, Ravan strikes her violently, then breaks down in tears, clinging to Vedavati's symbolic relics. For a moment, the fierce king reveals his raw, broken core. "You can be better," her words return. Kumbhakarna sees the flicker of his old brother. Chapter 25: The Invitation and the Insult. Ravan attends Sita's Swayamvar in Mithila with pride and ambition, confident that his strength and fame will win her hand. But the Swayamvar isn't just about power, it's about dharma and character. Sita rejects Ravan and chooses Ram instead. Ravan is humiliated in public. His pride shattered, he storms out, furious and wounded. Kumbhakarna follows in silence, fearing the rage now building inside his brother will soon seek violent release. Chapter 26: The Wrath of the Rejected. Ravan rages inside the Pushpak Viman after the Swayamvar. Kumbhakarna pleads with him to leave Mithila, but Ravan refuses. He wants vengeance. He declares Mithila guilty and calls for war. Kumbhakarna warns that Ram's presence, and potential retaliation from Ayodhya, makes a full assault dangerous. But Ravan's fury blinds him. "The city must burn," he says. Reason falls to rage. Chapter 27: Fire in the Bees' Quarter. Ravan's army attacks Mithila, expecting a quick win. But Sita and Ram have prepared the city brilliantly. Hidden archers from the Bees' Quarter ambush the Lankans, raining arrows through secret slits. Caught off guard, Ravan's elite bodyguards are slaughtered. Kumbhakarna begs him to retreat, and at last, Ravan agrees. Their pride takes a massive blow. For the first time, Ravan tastes military defeat, and it's delivered by Sita. Chapter 28: The Final Wound. 13 years after the failed Mithila invasion, Ravan gets his second chance. Sita is in exile in Panchavati. Though Ravan had sworn not to attack the Sapt Sindhu, this situation offers a loophole. Shurpanakha is mutilated by Lakshman, giving Ravan moral grounds to retaliate. He decides to abduct Sita. But the memory of the past still haunts him. The humiliation, the failure, and the loss of his elite bodyguard corps. Despite his people's expectations for revenge, Ravan knows he cannot afford another reckless war. Yet, obsession clouds reason. Chapter 29: The Mission to Panchavati. Ravan sends Vibhishan and Shurpanakha to abduct Sita, while Indrajit, his beloved son, is ordered to remain behind. The mission is a disaster. Sita captures Shurpanakha and Lakshman wounds her nose. Ravan is livid. His humiliation is complete. Yet it also gives him the excuse he's been waiting for, to break his vow and strike. Kumbhakarna warns against it, but Ravan won't listen. He sees the abduction not as a crime, but as divine justice for a broken past. Chapter 30: The Enemy of Aryavarta. Ravan storms Panchavati and captures Sita. But as he holds her unconscious body in the Pushpak Viman, his heart breaks again. He is not triumphant, he is hollow. Meanwhile, Kumbhakarna, gravely injured by the Asurastra used by Ram, lies dying in Ravan's arms. Ravan's soldiers are either dead or comatose. As he weeps over his brother, Ravan whispers, "Fly us out of this cursed place." Sita lies beside them, unconscious but untouched. Ravan has become what destiny always wanted, a feared villain, the enemy of Aryavarta.